Hey everybody, and welcome to our live video on Neptune through the houses. Welcome to everyone jumping on. For anyone jumping on, feel free to leave me a comment. Let me know you are here. Say hello. Very excited to be doing this topic. So as some of you know, I have been doing a lot of polls on this channel to see what kind of content you guys are interested in me doing. And I'm also doing a lot more lives. So if you're around, most of these lives are going to be around 6 or 7 Pacific time on days days that end in Y. And except for Wednesdays, because starting tomorrow, the Master Your Saturn course starts. So if you are not in the Saturn course, you guys need to get in it and check it out. Or if you've been wanting to do it or thinking about doing it, or you're just hearing about it now, there is a link in the description. You can email me for questions. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Pacific time is the cutoff for joining to run through the lives, to get in on the live tomorrow. So if you want to be in on the live tomorrow, make sure you join by 2 p.m. Pacific time and check out the course. So again, welcome to everyone here. Feel free to leave a comment and say hello. And that applies to you whether you are watching the live or you are watching the replay. And for those catching the replay, everything in this broadcast will still apply. It'll still be accurate. You're not missing anything as far as not making the live. If I see questions, I'll ask those maybe toward the end. So those of you in the chat, I'm going to run this live more like a pre-recorded video. I'm here and we're live, but I won't be interacting as much with the chat during the process, but I will check in at the end. So just know that if you want me to answer your comment or talk to you or respond, then you'll need to stay to the end of the video for those who are on the live. For those watching the replay, there will be timestamps at some point. It takes me time after the video goes out to do these, so bear with me on that. And so just know that you can go straight to the section of the video you want to watch. What are we doing tonight? We're doing Neptune through the houses. Now, this was a request you guys had because I've been doing all these polls on the channel on the community tab that ask you what videos you want to see. If you have not seen them, feel free to go in and vote for your favorite things because I listen to those. And so I'm doing a lot more live videos this month, and I'm starting with the things that most people vote on more of for the most part. So, maybe we'll get to a lot of them, even the ones that aren't super highly voted for, but we're going to do the highly voted for topics first so that you get the content you want to see. It makes sense, doesn't it? All right. So one more announcement and we will get into Neptune through the houses. The next announcement is that I do have a reading sale right now. So my normal one-on-one readings are on sale. There's a link in the description to get in on that. So just be aware of that. Now, moving on to Neptune through the houses. Let's talk first about a question I get so many times. I have heard so many times, and it throws people off so bad. And the question is, do you use whole sign or Placidus? So for whole sign versus Placidus, there's this great debate in astrology on this topic. My answer is it doesn't matter that much. Just pick one, and the answer to this question kind of depends on whether you're becoming an astrologer or you're just an enthusiast, not just. But if you never want to become an astrologer, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to even pick one. You can just listen and listen to both. And some people ask, well, what do I do with both? How do I interpret both? You just interpret them as two different things, this and this. It's not which one do I choose. So if you have Neptune in the first house in Placidus and it's in your second house in whole sign, you don't have to choose where your Neptune is. Your Neptune is where it is. You don't have to choose. You know, you don't have to choose. And this is like saying, okay, this is like saying, it's like someone takes a picture of your eyes and they take a front picture and then they take a profile picture. And you say, which picture do I go by? You go by both pictures because both pictures are accurate. You don't have to pick one because your eyes are still your eyes. Okay. So now that we got that settled, usually Placidus you're going to relate to more on the psychological level, and oftentimes whole sign will show up more in the physical world. Whole sign can still be psychological, but that is usually how they go. So that is the answer for that. We are doing Neptune. So on this Arwa, we are doing Neptune. So that being said, we will do Neptune through the houses, which is just me telling you what Neptune means through each house of the zodiac. We're going to start in the first house and we're going to go to the 12th house. Before we get into that though, let's talk about Neptune. Neptune, what Neptune does in the chart. I could say a lot about just Neptune, but we'll just stick to how it shows up in terms of what it means about you. Number one, Neptune is like a psychic antenna. There's a sensitivity with Neptune. There's a connection to things that are subtle. There's a connection to subtle energies. Not everyone who has Neptune in a house is going to be psychic, though, because that would mean every person on the planet is psychic, and that's not the case. So, just it's not like Neptune tells you where you're psychic. Neptune tells you where you are more sensitive, where you can pick up on things that are subtle that other people can't pick up on. And that may not be in a psychic way, or it may be. It also tells you where you're more receptive, where you tend to, absorb the energy of other people. Neptune can also be things that in your life are slightly confusing because Neptune, it's like the fog, and it's like you can't totally see where you're going when Neptune's around. So Neptune can confuse or make things harder to pin down, harder to get clarity in that area. And sometimes wherever Neptune is in your chart, you're going to want to or need to cut through that tendency to stop focusing on something. And that's one of the things about Neptune, is that we'll have a tendency to not want to deal with or not want to focus on the thing that Neptune represents. And so we could think of the houses as areas of life that we don't want to deal with based on where our Neptune is. That's not always true, but we'll get into those details when we get through each house. Another thing Neptune does is it has a numbing effect. Now, I did not include this in my interpretations, but there is a numbing effect sometimes with Neptune where, just depending on where it is and stuff, that numb is a keyword. And the thing Neptune can do in an area of life where it lands is disperse the energy, and not necessarily always in the best way, because Neptune has that, it's like a foggy, nebulous planet. It doesn't have edges, and the energy just kind of goes and it like whittles away, kind of like steam, where it just evaporates into the atmosphere. It's somewhere, but it's far, far apart. Nobody knows where it is. Sometimes the area of your life Neptune sits, the house, you can feel like that about it. Like, where did my kids go? No one knows. Where is my creativity? Where is my, passion, whatever it is. So that's just a little lovely intro to what Neptune can do. And we are going to go from there, starting with Neptune in the first house. If you have Neptune, and just so you guys know, I have my notes right here. These are my own notes that I wrote myself. So for this video, actually. So if you see me looking down and then up, that is why. So if you have Neptune in the first house, this is a strong place for Neptune because it is angular and because the first house represents your personality. So Neptune being in the house of you means you are like Neptune, intuitive, receptive, yielding, maybe slightly unfocused, maybe floating through life, right? And with Neptune, I think of taking the long and winding road, where you have to go back around, or you got to there's a tendency with Neptune, because of its dispersing nature, to do things in more of a roundabout way. It doesn't mean you're going to always be avoiding things, but it's your personality may not be quite as direct and like cutting with Neptune in the first. Some people with Neptune in the first are drawn to healing and the healing arts. Sometimes you can feel like it's hard to make major life decisions. That could be, or it's hard to make decisions about your body. Like it feels overwhelming. There's a fear that you're making the wrong choice. And you can feel like you don't have the ability always to get clarity on like, should I move? Should I date this person? Or it can go the other way where with Neptune in the first, you're like, all right, I'm just going to date this person. I'm just going to move here. And there's like this sort of, just kind of rolling through life a little bit. Sometimes again, though, with Neptune in the first house, you can feel like when you're trying to put energy and focused energy into something, it's a little bit harder or that energy gets dispersed. Now, this does not mean you can't focus ever. This depends on how strong this placement is for you and whether you have other planets and other things going on. So keep that in mind for everything. But you can feel like your energy, it's hard to like funnel it down to a point or funnel your focus down to a point. And again, so this can also give you that more easygoing attitude toward your life decisions. You can be very dreamy and very idealistic. You can also have a lot of compassion. You may not feel like you are fulfilled or you're happy unless you're like contributing to something bigger than you or feeling like you are sacrificing. So we should talk about sacrifice for that first house Neptune, because Neptune can also be associated with a martyr, like, oh, I give so much for you, and it's like that sacrifice can be positive where it's like, oh my gosh, yes, I am willing to give up everything. But with Neptune in the first, you may have certain life lessons along the way where you got to learn what is worth sacrificing for and what is not, and how much to give and when to give, because there can be and it can be easy to, want to give up everything for other people and identify with that, to identify as the one who is sacrificing, almost like the one who doesn't matter. So that's something just to watch out for, to find the balance between how much you're giving and how much you're receiving. And it's not even, I wouldn't even say that, how much you are giving, like how much of what you're giving away is actually things that are good for you to give away. Let's put it that way. With Neptune in the first, you can also be easily influenced by other people. So this can be susceptible. You can be very susceptible. You can be suggestible and just be really, really easily influenced. So what that means is you kind of do, if you have Neptune in the first, especially if it's near the ascendant, you're going to need to make sure that you are not, that you're not like, what was I going to say? That you're not around horrible people, right? Like, because you want to help everyone. And some of those people you want to help aren't always pure, aren't always, don't always have the value of kindness. Sometimes they're not. So you kind of need to make sure that you're around some people who you want to be like, if that makes sense. So also with Neptune in the first, sometimes the way that you come across might be a little bit, um, some people might not like it. Now, the reason is because sometimes the way Neptune in the first person comes across is in a roundabout way. They're not being clear. It's like, let me think of an example here. Like someone asks you like, "Oh, what was the last class you went to?" And your answer is like, "Well, first I went to this really long one." And it's like they really just wanted that really focused detail. So with Neptune in the first, sometimes your method of speaking or coming across while it might be really easygoing and like telling stories and enjoyable to be around, Neptune does bring a peaceful disposition usually. There is also that tendency to kind of come across as really unsure, wishy-washy, or not want to make a decision because, just in case there's something else we should do instead. So this can actually, if it's pronounced, depending on other things, but if it's pronounced, it may put a little bit of strain on certain relationships. And I say certain relationships because if the other people around you are also Neptunian, they're going to be fine. But if you're around some very, strict people, someone who really just wants some facts and some details, that's going to drive them a little bit nuts. But this is only going to happen if it's like a really strong placement for you. And even though Neptune in the first is a strong Neptune, it can be stronger or weaker depending on a bunch of other stuff. Also, Neptune in the first house can find answers in meditation. And it's better for you to put now, okay, go back. Let's go back to that for a second. You can find answers in meditation, and sometimes you have to find them there because it's almost like there is a tendency with Neptune in the first to sort of have a very flowy approach to life, and not everyone's going to get that. So if you try to get guidance or answers from people who are, I don't know, more Saturnian, more strict, more disciplined, more, hard worker in society where you're all off in your commune or something, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work because 'cause they're just coming from a different place than you are. Sometimes that's why, but either way, even if that's not a thing for you, finding answers in meditation can benefit you. Sometimes you can get answers there that, like, you just can't get anywhere else. Um, and sometimes again, like, sometimes it's hard for Neptune in the first to get good advice because of their approach to life. Their approach to life is a little bit different than like the status quo, pick a job and then go train for it. Neptune's approach to life is a little bit more, like I said, of a winding road. So there's more of a feeling of like meandering through life, but then at the end, seeing how all these different situations like led you to where you wanted. It really is that. Now, there is a tendency with this placement to be very idealistic, and we'll talk about that a lot today in all the different houses, how Neptune causes us to have too high expectations of the thing that Neptune is in, wherever it is, and get disappointed. So, that being in the first house, this could be of yourself or your life path. Your life path doesn't always have to be your career, it could be your relationships. It's like the combination of everything, right? Your relationships, your status, things that define you, your skills. It can be, your career can be involved in your identity, but it's really the skills you have that got you the career that is who you are, right? So that's all the first house. So with Neptune here, that approach being more winding, and that idealistic tendency toward those things, like the relationship you're going to have someday, and the job you're going to have someday, and the place you're going to live someday. Sometimes people with strong Neptunes like this will be saying someday, 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 until at some point or at different points for different things, they realize, oh, maybe that's not realistic, or maybe I don't want to do that. Or maybe it's not. I thought it was going to be amazing, and then I tried it and it totally sucks. So I'm going to change it. Or, other situations like this. It's not uncommon with Neptune to have moments where that idealistic bubble that you have, that's like an ideal that you've set, or a goal or a dream that you have, gets burst or gets popped or gets, whatever, gets shattered. It does. It can get shattered because Neptune rules illusion and delusion. So for that first house, this tendency shows up in your own self, your own identity, your own personality. So this could be, in the most extreme example, you get disillusioned by realizing at some point in life you are not who you thought you were. Other examples would be doing some other major life change and having it not live up to the potential you thought it would live up to. So that being said, let's go on now to the second house, for Neptune, if you have Neptune in the second house, you can be really generous with money. The second house being our money and possessions. This is going to be all about your work, your money, your things. And that's really it for the second house. So, and your values, the values go in the second. So sometimes you have more compassion for people who suffer financially. And sometimes with Neptune in the second, you will give all your money away or you'll spend a lot of money on suffering people or, something around along those lines. Other times, you could have some kind of deception at some point in your life when it comes to money and investments. Now, there is a way to learn from those experiences, but wherever we have Neptune, we have to be willing to see the bad in people because there's a tendency to either only see the good or not look closely enough to see the bad. And that's where that idealism and that bubble bursting comes from. So you do have to watch out. It doesn't mean you can't make investments or you can't do things related to money, but some people with Neptune here may have life lessons that you know involve not trusting someone and then realizing after the fact, uh, why you shouldn't have trusted them and learning that kind of the hard way. That's usually a theme with Neptune. So the way to work with that is be willing to look closely enough to see. And that's true for more, and we'll get to that. Sometimes with Neptune in the second, you can feel confused about money or find that money comes in a fluid way or a roundabout way or it fluctuates. It's not like a clear straight line, like a path to your money. You could feel like things are in constant flux. You can do something like being an artist. It's not the only thing you can do. And this one is not always. You're not always confused about money. It's just one of the ways this can manifest. For some people, their creativity could be a resource. And in some cases, I would say Neptune in the second could have to do with someone who works with people who are sick because Neptune rules sickness as well. Sometimes people could do social work, although there are other placements of Neptune that are stronger for this. But with Neptune in the second, your own artistry or creativity could be a resource to help you make money. It could be skills you use to make money. Although for many people with Neptune in the second, it might be hard to ask for money and it might be hard to ask for money from people who you think are broke. Like you might feel like you're taking from people even though you're giving. So I would say with Neptune here, you probably will have to work a bit on your value, seeing your value, seeing the value of your work, seeing the value of your creativity from a financial standpoint. You could spend your money on Neptune stuff, right? Whatever we have in the second house, sometimes we'll spend our money on that thing, or it's how we spend money. So if you're spending your money on Neptune stuff, that's going to be art or spiritual stuff. Um, there's other things, but those are the big ones. If you are spending money in a Neptune way, it comes in and then you don't know what happens. It just sometimes somehow disappears. Like you can feel like your money just dissolves. Okay. You can feel like your physical things just dissolve over time in some way. And just take that metaphor however it lands. But that is really common. And sometimes, it is hard with Neptune in the second with financial matters because there is a natural tendency to overlook and not want to deal with it. That's what Neptune does as well, is we don't want to deal with that thing. So when you have Neptune in the second, you want to, that's something you can work on. You just have to try. And the thing is that some people with Neptune in the second, if you say that, they're like, no, because that's kind of the effect of Neptune is it sort of makes us be like, oh, with Neptune, you just want the money to show up. You don't want to have to count it. And so if you have a position in life where that actually happens, you're set because that would be really aligned for a Neptune in the second house. There is also some things about love with this one, where sometimes with Neptune in the second, the way that you express love can be especially beautiful, romantic, or sentimental. So that's a really, really nice part of this placement. And okay, so another thing about Neptune in the second, this will be the last thing, is that if you feel stuck in a job or overlooked for promotions. This can happen sometimes with Neptune here. It's like Neptune doesn't like breed confidence or self-worth or like um, you know, our ability to see clearly who we are. Neptune in the same sign as your values. It's almost like you have to work through some of that fog to see your value, to get clear on it. And this can put you in positions where you feel like you are being taken advantage of. Your skills are you're overlooked for promotions. Now, some of this is because with Neptune, it's like that psychic antenna. So, what are you going to pick up on with Neptune in the second? Well, you're either going to pick up on all the possibilities of making money, or you're going to pick up on all the things, all of your own personal suffering around money, around job, work. Usually, like, not like your skills as much, but like how much money you get for what you do. And so, the thing about this with the psychic antenna is you can actually consciously try to tune yourself to the higher vibration. So instead of seeing how suffering you are with money, see your potential and get imaginative. You have the potential to be imaginative. So you can use that ability. You just have to take that same ability and just focus it on a different wavelength. I know I'm making that sound way easier than it is, but in practice, it's like it's the same muscle. You're just working it for a different purpose. So that's going to apply to anyone with Neptune in the second who really feels down about their job and really does not like or their work or the money they have and really does not like it. So that is what I have for Neptune in the second house. So now we're going on to Neptune in the third house. So the third house rules things like short bursts of communication, day-to-day trips, like running our errands, going to the grocery store, our regular path to our different places we go. It rules siblings. It also rules like aunts, uncles, and cousins. In your transportation, so your car. Those are the main things. There's a lot of things in the third house. So one of the ways this can show up, you could have a sibling who is like Neptune. That's usually going to be someone airy fairy, a total pot smoker who's like really easygoing, or other things. Someone who does other substances. Um, you could also have a Neptunian sibling could also be someone who's just really space cadet. Um, yeah, really easygoing space cadet, maybe does drugs or alcohol, maybe does, and that's any type of drug or alcohol. Maybe is like a healer type or a spiritual type or like a someone who's like doesn't do anything on time and like doesn't have anything together. So any of those things. If you don't have siblings, of course, don't that doesn't apply to you. When you're little with this placement, you could daydream while you're in school. You could just have a really strong imagination. That could stay there forever where you're always daydreaming or you just are imaginative. And it's just a matter as an adult to n- keep the imagination in the right place. You may have experience where you're just kind of being dreamy. You're not necessarily really being serious. And people are trying to redirect your thoughts when you're just like, oh, what if we had this? Or what if this was like that? In this case, sometimes you might have to tell the person, like, I wasn't being serious because your natural way of speaking and thinking is kind of up in the clouds compared to them. And so sometimes people will try to bring you down to earth, and it's like, you're not going to go. You're probably not going to go. But this does possibly breed some confusion in communication just because Neptune rules confusion. And this does not mean you can't communicate, but that, if that Neptune is strong, this will be that kind of situation where you're speaking in a roundabout way with your words. And you may find it hard to get to the point, or you're telling a story, you're speaking in riddles, you're speaking in a poetic way. It's like someone asks you for the time and you're like, well, the sun is high in the sky, and and it's just like they just wanted what the numbers on the clock, man, right? So it's like this can depend. Now there are times where, if you have Neptune here, it's not like that's going to be all the time, but maybe you could even think about your life and think about which situations am I not clear on? And it might just be when someone asks you about something that you're not sure about, you might say something that doesn't make a lot of sense, or you might feel like you need to like say something clear instead of just saying I don't know, and then it ends up getting into this foggy weird conversation where right, it could go the other way, where you have other people in your life like this talking to you, where you're asking them what time it is and they're telling you how to build a clock, and this, the paint on the clock on the wood or whatever, and you're like, oh my god. It can go that way as well. Not as often, and if it is those people, usually those are gonna be either siblings, aunts, uncles, or cousins, like extended family. Um, Other good things about this placement is that you can be inspiring with your words. And this is a big one. This is a good one, and it's really wonderful that you can not only be inspiring with your words, but you can speak in a way that is sort of flowing, or like, with Neptune, there's a softness, there's a subtle energy, there's a flow, it's very dreamy, it's very fluid, very beautiful. So beautiful words is a keyword for Neptune in the third house. Beautiful words. Doesn't mean every word you say is beautiful. Doesn't mean you don't cuss, right? We would need to look at other things. What other planets, right? So if you have like Mars or Pluto there, you're going to cuss a lot, probably. But um or even Saturn. But the point is, you could like cuss in a way that is like softer, or like, cuss in a way that isn't, oh, like I want to kill someone, or like, um, you know, how else would I say this? There are other planets that we would have to see everything about how you speak. You could also like to talk about things related to Neptune, which is spirituality, compassion, Buddhism, um, any kind of religion or spiritual practice that has to do with being aware of other people's suffering, and walking a path of nonviolence, right? You might like talking about that kind of stuff, spiritual stuff. Even sickness, some people might want to talk about sickness with this one, not everybody, but or how to heal sickness or something, healing in general with Neptune. So also sometimes with Neptune, again, there's the inspiration of the words, but then there's also a nice, usually a soothing voice, or again, like an ability to speak with a soothing voice, because you might find in different situations that you talk in different ways, right? But that you could have a soothing voice, or use your voice in a way that flows. Now, the third house rules your car. You could find that you get overwhelmed if you have to fix your car, and it just like overwhelms you more than the average person. And another way this can show up, because Neptune kind of erodes things over time. You could feel like your cars do that. They like erode over time. This might be through a lack of care, or a lack of ability to see when they need to be dealt with or fixed, or like sometimes this can be you just don't know your car needed a thing. But with Neptune, it's like, again, it kind of comes back to the inability to focus on the thing. Doesn't mean you can't focus on your car, or you can't get your car cleaned or anything, but just that that is a possibility of how this might manifest in the third house. If this is unbalanced, Neptune in the third, you could find that it's hard to run errands, because it's like, instead of going straight to the store, it's like, well, do I want to go to this store or that store? And then, so there's that possibility. There's also the possibility that instead of going straight to the store you want, you feel like you need to just check out every store and then see what each one has, and like the energy gets dispersed, right? You were going to go somewhere and you saw something, you wanted to stop. really easy to get distracted when you're going places, but you can also have fun little trips, fun little adventures, whether you're going to the store, I guess that's the only place I go. So, or whether you're going to a party or whether you're going to anything, it's like, especially if this is something in your local neighborhood, it's nearby, something you do all the time, you could have a nice little adventure, but you could also feel like your time just gets zapped and you're like, what was I even doing? And this can be true a little bit too for your daily routine, as far as like how you approach your routine and the things you have to do every day. I would say the sixth house is a little bit more on the daily stuff, but the third house has some daily component to it. So it's like, yeah, sometimes how you approach like the stuff you got to do is not as focused, harder to focus. You got to make yourself focus, easily get distracted. And again, doesn't mean you can't, but like, doesn't mean you can't focus, but that you have to try. Um, and that really is a solution for everything that Neptune unfocuses or blurs in our life. If you think of a camera lens, Neptune is going to blur that thing. You just have to bring that lens in and focus it down. And you may have to do that a little bit more. You'll have to do that consciously wherever you have Neptune. Um, Another thing too is there might be some misunderstandings with Neptune in the third because the way you think is more based on subtle energy that a lot of people don't pick up on. And they may find that, like, they may just think you're crazy. I mean, because they're looking at the physical and they're not picking up on things beyond, just the regular everyday stuff. So when you sense something that's like beyond the obvious, to you, it might seem very obvious and you'll just have a feeling. Like, I have a feeling I'm supposed to say this. I have a feeling that what this other person's saying is not what they mean, or I have a feeling, and it can just be the things that you think and reflect on. You just get feelings about them. You might not really know how you know what you think. You just think it. Now, this can be used as a skill in certain cases, but only in the right environment. So if you're around a bunch of, construction workers, probably not going to do well with this one. Trying to use it anyway. So it's just about finding the right environment where picking up the nuances of communication is useful and helpful, not annoying or not, like distracting from the point, if that makes sense. So feel free for everyone who is here and everyone watching after to let us know what landed the most for you with whatever Neptune you have. And if you want, you can share Placidus and whole sign, or just whichever one thing just really jumped at you or landed or was right on. So, fourth house. This one is, I have this one in whole sign. By the way, I have Neptune in the third in Placidus, fourth in whole sign. Fourth house, Neptune. There is a tendency to idealize people when you are young, like your family members, right? So, like to see your parents or your brothers and sisters, like everyone you were raised around as like the coolest person in the world. And so, there is a challenge here because then you have a bigger, like, it's normal. It's normal for every kid to feel like their parents are like the coolest people ever. But there's also that moment when you learn they're human. Usually you're somewhere between, like, I don't know, 7 and like 14 usually, or like 5 and 14 or something, where you realize like you kind of stop being a kid a little bit. So the point here with Neptune here, that experience might be a little bit more jarring. It might be a little bit more because that tendency is like the idealizing them is higher. They're on a higher pedestal with Neptune than like other kids. So then when they come off the pedestal, they have farther to go down. And that is the thing with Neptune in the fourth. Sometimes with Neptune in the fourth, there can be a lack of structure when you're younger. Um, and the thing is, this will depend on other placements. So, like if you have Saturn there, there'll be a lack of structure, and then there'll be structure, and then there'll be a lack in some areas, and there'll be a lot in other areas. So, but there can be a lack of structure. So things like not eating at the same time every day, or, going to a different babysitter and not knowing which one you're going to. Like maybe having a parent who works on call. So it's like you don't know what's happening next or whether they're going to be home when you get home from school. So this can be a lack of structure in a way that, is just like because your parents have a job that requires that, or, um, it can also be neglect. It's not uncommon. Neptune disperses. So the dispersed energy here is of the parent or parents. Now, this doesn't always mean you'll lose a parent, but sometimes it can be because Neptune isn't usually like, bam, they're gone. If a parent is lost, not always. If a parent is lost with Neptune in the fourth, it's a slow, subtle, like, now they're far away, and it doesn't mean, there can be other stuff going on, but it's like they might be there, but they're not there. That's more common with Neptune. And why would they be there but not there? Well, maybe because they're drunk all the time, maybe because they have a mental illness, maybe because they are not available, not emotionally available, maybe because they physically left, but they're still calling you, etc., etc. So there is that possibility. There's also a possibility you have parents who are there and they're hippies, they're really spiritual, or they don't give you clear expectations or guidelines, or like the guidelines change all the time and it's like this week you're in trouble for this and the next week you're in trouble for that, or or they're just less direct people, right? So this can go many different ways. But overall, I would say lack of structure in the family of origin is usually present in some form. So you can also be confused about your childhood, and that confusion could go either way, where you can think it's worse than it is, or you can think it's better than it is. You can feel like, oh, my parents are really good people, or the place I grew up is really great, and then realize later there are things you did not know that would have changed that. Um, That's kind of the most part, the confusion about childhood could also be things like memories that are like kind of muddled a bit, or it's just like if someone asked you to describe your childhood, and then they like got a fact sheet of everything that happened, it might not line up. Now, one of the things that I know that does this a lot is trauma, right? Because when you like if you were to ask someone like, "Was your childhood traumatic?" Most people are going to be like, "Well, it could have been worse." And then if you ask them more, they're like, "Well, yeah, my dad beat the shit out of me." You're like, "That's trauma." Right? And I'm not asking people these questions, but this is just an example, the most classic example, the most common example of um why someone would have, a confusing why someone would be confused about their childhood. It's also possible, again, with Neptune in the fourth, that you there's a lot of drugs and alcohol going on. It could just be that. There could also be a sick parent, a parent who has like usually this would be a more longer term nebulous sickness, like an autoimmune problem or something like that, like when you were growing up. So they're there, but they're not there, and then maybe they want to be there, but they can't be there, that kind of thing. Um, Now, another thing about Neptune in the fourth is that antenna is you're more receptive to the energies of your family of origin. Now, this is not always good. Sometimes it is good, sometimes it is bad, but you could think of it like the more you're around your family, the more you're going to become like them. With Neptune in the fourth, you would prefer a peaceful, easy home life that is important to you. And you could be confused yourself about what home means to you. So, the fourth house rules home. Now, that can be our house, but also like the place that we call home, where the heart is. So, you could be confused about what that means. That would look like maybe seeking a feeling of home and wandering around for it and trying to find it and feeling kind of lost, being a nomad. You can have this idealized, dreamy idea of what home is supposed to be and have this, you know, idea in your mind that someday, you'll find this wonderful, perfect home that's like the perfect home, right? Like you got it in your head. There's a perfect place. There's a, oh, I can't think of the word, but like there's a place that if you just find that place, then everything will be all right. And if that's the case, the lesson here is that there is no such place, right? Like there's no such place where everything's always going to be all right. But Neptune in the fourth can have an experience of this, of like trying to find the perfect home. Now, that can also be the perfect house to live in. And maybe having really high expectations, or having a ideal house that's way beyond your means, or something like that. Other things could be, yeah, again, this can be nomad, just like being homeless, or having your home on your back, and just because Neptune dissolves, right? So the fourth house is the home. Neptune dissolves, so it's gone. And it doesn't mean your house gets like vanished, but just like your ability to maintain a solid residence can be dissolved. That's one way it can look. Also, the fourth house is our emotional foundation and what we need to feel okay. With Neptune here, again, you need peace and ease. So this is interesting because you need peace and ease in your home, but you might not be able to always stabilize it. Like that takes some work. Another thing is you could feel like your emotional foundation, just your set point of how you feel day to day, is maybe very flexible and easily influenced by other people. Now, I'm not saying that if you have Neptune here, you're a total basket case or something, but there is a movement, there is a flow with Neptune. And so it's like you could find different phases of life where, during one phase, maybe you're more, no, I'm wrong. Oh, I'm wrong. I said something wrong earlier, but I'll correct it in a minute. Okay, so not about the astrology, about what I said about where I have Neptune. So anyway, you yeah, your emotional foundation, you could find that during certain phases of life, that emotional foundation is solid and then it dissolves. And that doesn't mean you have none, but just that it becomes more fluid. Now that fluid experience can be good or bad. It can be you get so spiritual that you don't have needs anymore, right? And it's like you're okay just moving through the world, letting things flow through you, and you can just let them wash through you, and like you don't have to have anything to feel okay. That's like the highest potential. The worst potential here is the opposite, where like no matter what you have, you don't feel okay. No matter what you have, the feeling of being okay in your own skin is fleeting. Um, so that is a really positive note to end that one on. But overall, this is a strong Neptune, and it really does to bring a peacefulness and an ease and a maybe a divine connection to you and your home and what you feel home means. So we're going to move on to the fifth house, but first I have to clarify what I said wrong. I actually just told you the wrong information about my own astrology. I don't know what is wrong with me. But my Neptune is not in the third house in Placidus and the fourth house in whole sign. It's in the fourth house in whole sign and the fifth house in Placidus, or vice versa. I think it's vice versa, but whatever. I don't have Neptune in the third, and I don't know why I was thinking that. Going back to our fifth house, our houses. So Neptune in the fifth house is going to be very creative. So this one's really good for creative potential. Now, your creative potential with Neptune in the fifth house can bring you a lot of fulfillment. It can bring you a lot of joy. This doesn't always mean you're going to do it for your job. It's just Neptune here. I wouldn't say that. I would look for other things. But it can be something that, like when you express yourself creatively, you feel good. And there are other times though where that creativity will get dispersed and dissolved. So that would look like taking up a hobby of painting and then quitting. Or something I did when I was like 16 or 17, which is like I was taking piano lessons and choir lessons, and I think I was learning another instrument or something. I don't remember, but I was doing something else at that time, and I ended up not continuing with any of them. So it's like that kind of stuff where like you'll pick up a hobby and just slowly let it go, or maybe not even slowly. Now, with Neptune in the fifth, this also has to do with love, dating, and romance. So you can fall in love way too easy and get all googly eyed really, really fast. But this is not like a Uranus falling in love fast. This is because it doesn't have to be like, bam, you're in a relationship. It's like you meet the person and you just think they're perfect before you've gotten to know them. So this is where we get back to this tendency for Neptune to put that thing on a pedestal and to idealize it and to just want the most amazing thing and not always be looking at it with a discerning eye. Because Neptune's tendency to dissolve our focus applies to that. That's part of why. It's like when you're not looking at something really clearly, it's really, really easy to just think it's great because you're not scrutinizing it. So that's the tendency with Neptune in the fifth, is to meet someone, fall for them or get a crush on them, and not take that next step of going, okay, are they who I think they are? You won't be asking that question. You'll be making up the details in your head of like, oh my God, they're the best ever, right? There's that tendency with Neptune in the fifth. Now, so what can happen is you can get crushes and then get let down hard when you realize they're not who you thought they were. And this will probably happen a few times in early life where it's like you just think it's going to be okay and it's not good, or like you think they're really into you and they're not into you at all, or other things like that where it's like where someone without Neptune here will think someone's into them, take a little step, and then wait and see what the person does. Right now, this is something a lot of us don't learn until we're older, so it's all good. But this is that tendency with Neptune to put that person way high up on a pedestal and not look at the details. And it's almost like um, it's not like you want to be deceived, but you're not doing the thing that a person would do if they were trying to like be be sure about a person, or a person usually with the fifth house. So that you can learn over time how to discern who has good intentions, which ones are true and which ones are false. And sometimes this can take some reflecting. Once you know this, you can look at, oh shoot, have I done this? How have I done this? And you can see really easily once you're in that place of this information. So if you reflect over the past, oftentimes you can see how you maybe again idealize someone, didn't listen to the clues that they weren't going to stick around or whatever. Also, you can fantasize a lot when it comes to love and relationships. That part by itself is fine as long as you know you're fantasizing and you keep it under wraps and it's not like hurting you. This is not a good placement for gambling. The fifth house rules gambling. Neptune in the fifth will give you a tendency to gamble when you shouldn't, right? To risk when you shouldn't because of that tendency to idealize. So like you could buy that lottery ticket being convinced you're going to win when you're not thinking of the odds. Now this can show up in other things that are not lottery, anything that's a risk, like taking financial risks, where you're like, okay, this is going to pay itself back in like 3 months. If you have Neptune in the fifth, you have to learn how to scrutinize. And that also can be developed just like we talked about with the love stuff, where it's about, and I'm speaking from some experience here. Hold on. I'm going to try to raise this a bit. So yeah, when you are back to what we were saying. Okay, with gambling, with Neptune and gambling, when you're taking those, it's like this tendency to risk and like just believe. Okay, this is like if a coach says, take my program and you'll make 10K in a month. With Neptune in the fifth, if you haven't dealt with this, you'll be like, okay. And the program's like $50,000, right? I mean, this is an extreme example, but it's the perfect example. And you take someone with Neptune in the fifth will be like, okay, this will work only if I make it, and so I'm going to do it. Whereas someone who doesn't have that experience of risk will actually go, okay, this will only work if I make 10K in a month, so I'm not going to do it, right? Like the person with Neptune in the fifth will just assume it's going to work and then be very disappointed when it doesn't. So when Neptune in the fifth, this could show up in other things, not just gambling, but it would be good to consider that in your life, how the tendency to over risk and then be super disappointed after that risk comes to, become something that didn't work out. Like, where does that show up for you? It can still have to do with sex and dating, where you're like, this is going to be the hottest person ever, and they are not, or like, they just seem so fun, and whatever it is, like taking things at face value, sometimes even just seeing what you want to see in a person, kind of a thing. Neptune gives you more compassion in that area. So sometimes, with Neptune in the fifth, you could have more compassion for children or like starving artist type people or entrepreneurs. You can also spend your parents' money sometimes, not always, but sometimes. And if you have a desire to get paid for your creative passion and you have Neptune in the fifth, you will need to build the skills and develop self-confidence in them first. Now, the reason I say that is because you might have this deep longing to help other people before these things are established and not know where to put that desire. And it's like, I was stuck in this for a while. I have this placement where it's like, you could feel like, oh, I just want to help people. I want to help people heal. I want to help people understand themselves. But you may not know, you may have no idea what to do to actually get to that place. Or, a creative passion can be something else. It could be like, I want to be a painter or a singer or anything else. And you're like, but I don't know how. So there's a tendency to like if you have this and you want to be a singer, to be like, okay, I'm just going to sing every day, but you're not doing the activities that would make you a better singer, right? You're not working on your breath. You're not working on your vibrato. You're not working on your vowels and your openness in your throat and all the things you got to do as a singer. And so you'll do it, but you won't get better. Okay, so I'm not saying everyone with Neptune in the fifth is never going to get better. I'm saying there's a tendency for that energy to be unfocused. So I wish I knew this when I was younger, man. There's a need to focus that energy in on that creative thing. And you'll have to work really, really hard to focus your creativity on a point. There'll be a tendency to be all over the place and do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this. And that's fine for a certain period of time. But once you are trying to develop the skill, that's when you'll need to really put in extra effort to stabilize that, ground it, and bring it into physical form, create routines, and that kind of thing. Let's talk about that self-confidence, because the fifth house is our self-expression. It's how we express ourselves to the world. When Neptune here, it dissolves that. Our ability to sort of have confidence, to like confidently be like, this is who I am. So that is something to consciously develop, the ability to say to the world, this is who I am in whatever way you do. So there is that. And I'm just checking on the comments here. Perfect. Okay, guys, let's go on now to Neptune in the sixth house. And like I said, for people commenting right now on the live, I will be looking at your comments and just chatting with you guys after. I'm not probably going to answer like personal chart readings, but I will answer other questions. If Neptune is in the sixth house, that is the house of service. And this one gives you a very, very, very strong desire to be of service, to help people, to make the world better, right? Because the sixth house isn't just like helping people, it's like being useful. So Neptune in the sixth really, really wants to be useful. And when you feel like you're useful, when you feel like you're helping people, that's when you're going to feel like, you're probably going to get a lot of, what's the word? Oh, I can't think of the word. You're going to get a lot of good feelings. When satisfaction, happiness, fulfillment is the word. You're going to get a lot of fulfillment when you feel like you can benefit people. This one, you might have to learn how to stop doing that, because with Neptune, again, it's like you could be all over the place. And so what that looks like is anytime someone needs your help, you feel like you have to do it. You feel like you have to be there. You feel like you have to say yes. You feel like it's just your duty and responsibility. And you might not even feel like you have to say yes. You might just say yes. Does that make sense? Like you might just be like, okay, yeah, got to do it. But it's not always from this harsh, forced perspective of feeling like, oh my God, I have to do this. Sometimes it's more from a perspective of just, you're not consciously thinking about it at all. It's just, okay, let's do it. Now I feel like this is too high. Okay. Okay. So then what else? Sometimes with Neptune in the sixth house, it's hard to organize yourself. It's hard to be clear about what you got to do every day. It's hard to organize your daily routine because Neptune disperses, it dissolves. And the sixth house is the stuff you do every day. So you might do things in a roundabout way. Like you open a book to read and then you realize you left it down, or you want to open a book to read. You realize you left it downstairs. You go downstairs to get it. You forgot to finish the dishes. And then when you're doing the dishes, you realize the sponges you were going to get at the store or in your car. So you got to go out to your car to get the sponges. It's like that for Neptune in the sixth. And that's just life every day. And it's just, you'll just like flow through, and like 27 steps later, you're reading your book. But that's kind of how it might be. Now, again, all of these things can be worked with by just bringing conscious focus to that area, and also giving yourself a break because it's the area that's the hardest for you to focus. Now, with Neptune in the sixth, I would say you can feel really connected to pets, but for some reason, I feel this is probably more in a global way. And what I mean by this is, like, when you have your moon in the sixth, you will love pets and you'll feel connected to them and you'll be very sensitive to their needs in a personal way. But with Neptune here, it's like in a less personal way somehow. So whether that is because you send them energy work from afar, or you like looking at pictures of pets but you don't want to have one, or something else where it's like, if you have a connection to pets with Neptune in the sixth, it may not be as personal unless you have other planets there. You could have a idealistic attitude toward jobs, work, and coworkers. So this could be like, you think you're going to get the best job in the world, and then you get it and then it doesn't work out. You think that you're working on day 1 and you're like, I'm going to be the CEO of this company. And it's like, maybe, in some cases that person's going to do it, but with Neptune in the sixth, usually it's more a reflection of your own need to escape, right? Because being day 1 sucks. Day 1 sucks. And so that's why we do this, right? We escape when our conditions are harsh and difficult. And so sometimes people with Neptune in the sixth may have more challenging situations. Not challenging, but like they may feel less respected at work. They may feel like they're not getting high position. They might be the one who always like helps everyone, but like doesn't get paid as much. The sixth house is what we do for work. It's not our money house. So it's like stuff we do for work that we don't make money at, or we don't make a lot of money at. There's also a possibility of feeling like the skills you have to do, you don't really, I don't know, like you don't necessarily know what skills to build next in order to get to where you want to be, but you have a huge dream. It's like this feeling like, oh my God, I want to help everyone. I just want to be able to work all day helping everyone. And someone's like, doing what? And you're like, I don't know. And that's Neptune in the sixth, because you're connected to that big, huge vision, but you have no idea what to do. So, on this one, you may need a little support helping you bridge the gap from where you are and where you want to be. And you may also find that at certain times in life, there are reality checks or wake up calls that show you that where you want to be isn't maybe where you really want to be. That maybe being that CEO, that sucks worse than day one did. And it just seemed like it'd be good, those kind of situations. Um, Now, this does kind of make it harder to figure out when you are job searching, when you're making a transition into a different kind of work. Um, when you're again trying to reach a certain level, I think of Neptune in the sixth worst case scenario. This is going to be like you want a job as a real estate agent, and then you work in a real estate place as the receptionist, and you just get stuck being the receptionist because you don't know how to go from that job to the other one. Even if you did the schooling and stuff, it's like the path or then the boss is like, "No, you can't." So it's like it's not easy or clear how to change or how to move up in work. And sometimes Neptune in the 6th house doesn't even want to, it's like sometimes they don't want to, and it's not like you don't want to, okay? Because you want the end result so bad, but you don't always want to go through the process of getting to the end. There's a disconnect between, the job you really want versus the job you think you really want. Or, maybe there's, you go into work thinking it's going to be fun and easy, and then it's like, you're mopping floors all day. And it's like, man, that is not what I thought. You know what I mean? So it's like sometimes you have to reconcile some things when it comes to Neptune like this. So really though, really, really good placement for like being a kind and helpful person, someone who wants to make a difference in the world. Now, sometimes this can have to do with health. Um, and and the thing about Neptune and health is that Neptune is like problems that don't have a clear cause and like slowly cause problems. Like you slowly get sicker and sicker, or you slowly fade away. Now, that does not mean everyone with Neptune here will get sick, but there might be an experience with sickness in your life that is significant because you have the planet of sickness in the house of sickness. So there really is a possibility here. Now, this could be you work with sick people. You have a sick parent. You're always taking care of the sick people in your family whenever they get sick, or other things like that. So, and that could also be healing, right? Because sickness and healing. So this can have all those things I said about sickness, but healing. Like maybe someone in your family is healing. Maybe you heal people or do healing work outside of your regular job or for your job. So those are some other possibilities of Neptune in the 6th house. So now we're going to move on to Neptune in the 7th house. With Neptune in the 7th, I'm going to give you guys some real talk because I tried to find something good about each of these placements. This one I could not. I could not find anything good about Neptune in the 7th house. It's all hard, okay? It all makes it harder. So I'm just going to warn you, this is everything that's wrong with your relationships. So if you're not in the mood, come back when you are. So with Neptune in the 7th, you can have a lot of compassion for your partner and even idealize them at times. You can be very sensitive to their needs and attentive to their needs. Now, the idealizing this is going to have usually some pretty clear and difficult ramifications in relationships because you can easily be deceived in love. You can miss red flags. You can just want to be with someone as like an escape from either a family situation or a last relationship where it's like you just, escape into the relationship. And then with that, it's like eventually problems come up, if you don't know who you're getting into bed with. So you can be in love with the idea of love. And when you're in love with love, um, when you're in love with love, you can fall for anyone because you're just in love with being in love. and you just love being in love, right? So it's like this is part of why Neptune in the 7th, it's very romantic. There's a desire to just be, like lost and swept away in love. And there can be really, really beautiful things about that kind of experience, but it usually isn't like that feeling of swept away. Even in the best relationships, nobody stays in that feeling. So when that feeling ends, it's like there's more to reconcile. So sometimes you can attract Neptune type people. And Neptune type people are people who are homeless, jobless, addicted, suffering, or somehow need your help. This can be a thing with Neptune in the 7th, though, is where people will, even if you're like a spiritual person, you might get into a relationship with another spiritual person who's like newer to spirituality, and you got to help them with everything, and you got to like be patient with them when they don't get stuff, or like if you're in AA and then you fall for someone new in AA who like needs more, more support, more help. Now, this doesn't have to be a bad thing if you want to have the role of like the person who helps. There can be challenges here too, but it can work. It can work. But it's something to be aware of, that there's just sort of an antenna that just draws you to them or draws them to you. Now, for some people, again, it's like that lack of fulfillment in your family life. You'll just go escape into a marriage. And then whenever that does happen, you'll realize, like, oh my God, who did I marry? At some point, you're going to realize that. Other things that can Neptune, because Neptune dissolves, right? It can cause you to not focus clearly enough on your responsibilities in the relationship, and sort of just let the driving the car of the relationship um, go to the partner. Now that's not going to be true if you're with one of the Neptune type people. So it's like either it's them or it's you. So usually there's this imbalance here with like almost like a healer patient archetype within the relationship. Healer, I'm thinking of a word besides patient. Healer, whatever the opposite of healer is. And then you can also get more overwhelmed or confused when you want to break up with someone, because it'll feel like you'll have reasons why you shouldn't. You'll second guess it. You won't be able to come to that clear point of like end the relationship. Doesn't mean you won't be able to, but you'll have more mental fog to go through before getting to that clear point. You could also be more sensitive to the needs of your partner. So, like if they're sick or they're suffering, you might be able to pick up on that more. And that could also be used as a gift, where you can like just kind of know when your partner needs something and they don't have to tell you, or kind of know like or want to like take care of them when they're sick, or have that like Neptunian service of being there for them show up. All right. So, um, 8th house. Neptune in the 8th house. This one's a little more straightforward, and this one is straight psychic. Okay, I would not call most of the Neptune psychic. Actually, that's not true. I would not call most Neptune house placements giving psychic abilities, but the 8th house does. The 8th house does. So this can be straight psychic, or it can be like your close relationships, you just know things. Especially people you get to know. When you get to know them, you just know things. Some people with Neptune in the 8th will be confused about their sexuality because the 8th house rules intimacy. 8th house Neptune can magnetically attract partners. And it's just like there's this magnetism. There's just this ability to just draw people in. So on this one, the idealization side of Neptune is more likely from the other people toward you, especially after you have sex with them, where it's like, and this can be whether you're doing it on purpose or not. There's just like something about you. If you have Neptune in the 8th house, there's something about you, and that's all that it is. But then the thing is the people you draw in have more of a potential of being hurt by that. So be aware. And other ways this can show up is you can have a tendency to spend all your money on your romantic partner. And this can be a negative thing where you're like pouring all your money into them and they're not necessarily giving or providing anything back, or very little back for what you're giving in. And it's just like a one-way street with just pouring money into them and then they spend it all. And then, like just that kind of stuff. Now, that may not happen every time, but there is that potential with this placement of that happening. Let me see if there's anything else on the 8th house. You are very yielding to other people's energy in the 8th house. Now, what is that? That's going to be money, but it's also intimacy. So it's like this is a really, really beautiful placement for relationships in a way because it's just like you'll probably be really easy to be around when it comes to like the really like people trust you. People probably trust you, right? Really easily. So that's something to keep in mind with this placement that with Neptune in the 8th, people are going to trust you more easily. So if you get that trust, try not to totally shatter it. um, yeah, so that's what I have on Neptune in the 8th. Actually, let's talk about the paranormal for a minute because, the 8th house does rule death. I don't talk about death a lot on my channel because I don't want anyone listening to get scared of something that may not even be true for them, right? So I don't want people thinking, "Oh my God, my son's in the 8th house. Am I going to die?" No, no, not no. Okay. And nothing on my channel is going to tell you if you're going to die. So just know that everyone forever for future. But Neptune in the 8th will make you sometimes an antenna for that topic. Now that can show up as I see dead people type stuff like mediumship or talking to the dead or like actively connecting with the other side, but the other side being like ghosts, people who've passed over, things that are beyond the veil. Okay. Possibly spirit guides. I think of those more of a 12th house thing though. Um, but that kind of thing where it's like there's that connection. Now, some people with Neptune in the 8th will have that connection. They'll block it when they're young. That is a possibility. And not everyone's Neptune in the 8th will show up this way, but it's a strong possibility. Another possibility is confusion around things like taxes or accounting or interest or whenever you're making binding agreements that relate to other people's money, that Neptune is going to make it more confusing and just a little bit more, probably more things to untangle there. So let's go on now to the 9th house. So the 9th house is going to be Neptune in the 9th. I gotta say this is a pretty good one in my opinion because they're so compatible. The 9th house being all about like how we dream and like learn about higher wisdom and travel, a lot of things that Neptune's sort of nebulous general energy kind of goes well with. So overall, Neptune in the 9th, positive. So we'll talk about this will make you usually very philosophical, very studious or religious or mystic or esoteric, really drawn to beliefs and meaning, um, and like having a lot of energy on this. The meaning of life is meaningful to you if you have Neptune in the 9th. With Neptune in the 9th or Pluto in the 9th, if you travel, you got stories or you got experiences or you got some wild shit, probably more than even Uranus. But like if you travel, you got something totally unique and lovely or strange or just different to talk about. Now, when it comes to following your own dreams, because the 9th house is the house of our dreams in life, this might be a little bit harder with Neptune here because this goes back to Neptune's tendency to have some very big goal, but have no idea how to reach it. So it's like, I have a dream of like having this system, but it's like, I don't know how, like, what do I do though? Like, I just want to, it's like the feeling about what you want to do is strong, like, oh, I want to help all the starving people. But it's like, how are you going to do that? I don't know. So it's like there's a need to bring that down to earth and like try to do something with it because you're not naturally with Neptune in the ninth going to be able to focus that on a clear path. Sometimes you might need help figuring out what the path is. And here's the thing about Neptune, sometimes you don't want to do the path. Sometimes you just like having the dream. So with Neptune in the ninth, we got to look out for that. Um, and in general, when it comes to your own life path and direction, you can go back and forth and be a little wishy-washy and like, is this going to be the most meaningful thing? And it's best for Neptune in the ninth in general to just keep going. Or if you do need to pause and reflect, give yourself a limit because you could do that your whole life and be like, is this the right decision 10 years later? You still don't know if it's the right decision. And with Neptune, because Neptune feels like we're driving in the fog, we really don't see the full end. And so there's a need to let it be okay to be on the journey with Neptune in the ninth. You might already feel like that. You're like, yep, I'm on the journey. It's cool. It's cool. But if you're feeling confused, let it be okay that being confused is part of the path. You can find meaning in a spiritual path. You can find meaning in astrology. And you may not feel fulfilled unless you're like doing something that you feel like helps the whole world or is like big or has a mission. It needs to have a mission. Also, with Neptune in the ninth, there can be some disillusionment around teachers. So, like, you can grow up, even when you're younger, thinking your teachers know everything, and then having to realize teachers or gurus or something thinking they're the best ever, and having to go through the experience of being disappointed when you realize they don't. So, we all have this wherever Neptune is, and for ninth house Neptune, it relates to those people who are like professors, especially. But if you don't have professors, this would be like the teachers you grew up with or people who taught you stuff. Um, there is some potential here that when you're super young, you believe in things that later somehow let you down, right? So like I can't think of anything, but it's like, like I don't know, having a job where you're like getting into the healthcare field and being like, I'm going to help people get better. And you get in a very specific branch of healthcare that just isn't doing that. It's like, I don't know, you end up writing up doctor's notes and you can see how much all the doctors don't care and then you get disillusioned. That's a very specific example. It's probably not going to be that for most of you, but just think about how that has showed up in your life where, you have a belief that something is going to be meaningful and then you have to face that that really wasn't and having to deal with that disillusionment and sort of heal from that. Let me see what else I can say about this. The ninth house is also where you are most receptive to other people's energies. So, this makes me feel like some people with ninth house Neptune may find that they always know how to help other people on their spiritual path of fulfillment or they, can listen to all the spiritual teachers or whatever, but it's like I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of a disconnect between being able to do that for themselves all the way. Or more likely, I would say is they could find they're on some religion or on some belief system or on some, theory of the week and then it just fades away. And then the next week there's a new one, or the next year there's a new one, and then that old belief just fades away. Now that's not a terrible thing. Um, and there's a beauty to Neptune and a beautiful flow when it comes to beliefs as well that can show up where it's like, yeah, that last thing faded away, and then that book you needed fell off the shelf at just the right time. So there's that potential too with Neptune in the ninth house. So now we're going to go on to Neptune in the 10th house. So for Neptune in the 10th, it's most likely your career might be quite interesting, unique, different, um, varied, varied. So like either the job you do is varied or the shifts in direction that you take kind of vary a little bit. And now with Neptune in the 10th, you can feel unclear or foggy or unsure about your path in work, your path to your highest potential in work, usually there is a feeling of destiny here, though. There's a feeling of like wanting to reach your destiny. And this can actually make it harder because, again, it's like I want to help all the people solve all the problems, but it's very hard for Neptune in the 10th to know what their next step is for that thing. Sometimes you need help with that to break down your goal into smaller pieces and see, is it realistic? What does helping all the people mean? What kind of people? What kind of help? Like you have to work to do those things with Neptune here. And again, you can be very, very idealistic in your career. You can feel really disappointed if the work you're doing isn't meaningful. You can also do it really well in a field that requires you to deal with people's problems. This is because Neptune rules, like especially invisible problems. Yeah, they're stressed and they need to get clients in their business, but you're helping them with the part people don't see about that, which is like their belief about how capable they are, or something like that, where it's like the beliefs are not visible. You can't see them. So something like that where you're dealing with people's problems, helping them solve their problems, feeling like you're healing. Some people with Neptune in the 10th will do like work that's like, nursing or other types of fields that deal with healing people or helping sick people. Um, that can happen. And what else? You can also be possibly more receptive in your work. And again, it's like doing work where you get to be compassionate is really essential because that Neptune and the 10th means your compassion is visible to the whole world. It's like one of the most visible things about you. So like when someone sees you, they're going to be like, "Oh, she's so compassionate." Like it'll just shine through. It'll just show, or he, sorry. It'll just shine through, or any other pronoun. Basically, they're just gonna see you as compassionate. And so that's something to know, that even if you're in a job that doesn't require compassion, people are gonna see you as a compassionate person. And with Neptune in the 10th, you may find that when you act more compassionate at your job, whatever it is, people like it more. They want to see that from you, whether that's like clients, coworkers, or anything else in between. So then let's go on now to the 11th house. With Neptune in the 11th house, dreams. Dreams are a big deal. With Neptune in the 11th, you have the planet that is dreams in the house of dreams. You could have some big ones. They can matter a lot to you. So now we have that same idealistic tendency that we've been talking about today in the 11th house, where dreams become really important. Dreams become big, so big that are they realistic, right? So there's that thing where at some point, sometimes Neptune 11th house people have to see that the dream they thought they wanted, they don't really want, or the dream they wanted isn't possible, or they have to sacrifice a lot for their dreams. Um, and that's another thing, actually. I want to go back to the 10th for a minute because I'm just feeling like I should. So back to the 10th, there is a tendency to sacrifice wherever we have Neptune. Neptune in the 10th is angular, which means it's strong. This is one of the strongest places for Neptune. So if you have Neptune in the 10th, you could still have a lot of the same qualities that someone with Neptune in the first would have, of being more intuitive, receptive, yielding, being drawn to healing or the healing arts, feeling more unclear when you have to make a major decision, feeling like sometimes your energy gets dispersed instead of going straight toward what you want. Now, this is going to change depending on a lot of other personal placements. Now, you could have a more easygoing attitude with Neptune in the 10th toward your career. And if that's the case, this is more of like I just don't want to think about it. I want it to just happen kind of a feeling. That's Neptune's tendency to, you know, blur or dissolve the focus. Now, and remember, you can still work with that by focusing in on that thing and doing that thing. But you'll have to try harder or put more energy to kind of make yourself do it because it's not natural to you. So one of the ways we solve Neptune problems is by focusing. And there was something else. Neptune can, yeah, it can give you, that sacrifice in career. So it is possible with Neptune in the 10th that you could get in yourself in some situations in your career, especially with your reputation of being the person who sacrifices. Now, this is like the shadow side of Neptune is like the martyr, or like the, what's the word I'm thinking of here? Give me a second. I'm not going to think of it. It's a complex when you think you need to heal everyone. Where you just believe everyone needs your help, and you're like it's a psychological problem, actually, like a healing complex. It's not it. I'm gonna try to find it because it's gonna drive me nuts. No, darn it. Okay, so I don't know what that word is right now. I hate it when that happens. But it's kind of a thing where, like, again, you just believe that people need your help even when they don't. There's a need inside of you that needs to help other people. This is like a shadow side of Neptune, because sometimes when we rush to help someone, that actually doesn't help them. You guys know what I mean? When you're like, you want to help someone so bad, but they don't want your help, or they don't value your help. Or like, if you're like me, at one point, I was coaching all my friends, and it's like, that's not really friends if they're not coaching too, if you're not both coaching each other. So it's like, it's not a superiority complex. It's a different kind of complex. It's like a savior complex. Got it. Where you want to save everyone. Now that can show up no matter what Neptune you have. If you have a strong Neptune, that can be a thing to work through. Neptune in the 10th is very, very, very strong, no matter what sign it is in. And so you could have to have dealt with this at some point in your life, especially when it comes to work, where it's like that savior complex, that need to coach everyone at work, or like solve everyone's problems at work in a way that like doesn't support them or you, could have to be addressed at some point. Now, that's only for some people, and it may not show up that severe. Um, but it could also be, and let me be clear, I'm not saying everyone with Neptune in the 10th has a savior complex. I'm using that as a metaphor for how people with strong Neptune move through the world sometimes when it's not working, or when it's, off balance. So when it's off balance, going to work, feeling like the martyr, right? The martyr of like, because sacrifice, like I just have to give everything up for my job. Now, this can work well, really, really well. Neptune in the 10th for spiritual people, spiritual work. I mean, really, you have the planet of spirituality in your house of profession and reputation. So if you have Neptune in the 10th, it doesn't mean you have to do spiritual work, but you can be well known for that. You can be well known for it. And again, there probably is some kind of need to find a boundary or find a balance. I've seen Neptune in the 10th be very, very good, like coaches. Not that you have to go be a coach, but that is, you do really well when you help people with their problems. So I think we'll move on now, really this time, to the 11th house. So if you have Neptune in the 11th house, dreams are significant. You can have very big dreams in life. You can feel like you need to sacrifice for your dreams. And you can have a time in life at some point where you realize the dream you thought you wanted isn't possible, or it's not realistic. So for some people, this might be like an athlete who gets hurt. For another person, it might be that, you want to be an opera singer, and then it's, like at some point it's just like, I'm not going to, you realize you're not going to do it. Now, this may not show up as much with your hopes and dreams. This could also show up in society or your circle of friends, because the 11th house rules groups of all kinds. So the groups you go out to when you're in like events for work, the groups you go out to have fun, big circles of friends, or the groups you are in on social media, or any professional associations or anything like that. So when you have Neptune here, that circle can be huge. It can be huge. Like you could just want to know you can know everyone, you can want to help everybody, and you can be the one people come to for help, or the one who lends a helping hand to all the people, or you want to help people in your community, whatever your community is, whether this is like your extended circle in your little town, whether this is a community at like a workplace you go to, or whether it's an online community, you usually want to help everyone. And usually you can get people to be your friend. It's almost like Neptune gives a charm here, a charm in groups. For my shy people watching this who are like, that's not me, you still might be charming even though you don't realize it, even though you don't want to be in a group, right? So Neptune in the 11th doesn't make you enjoy being in groups. It means when you are, people, you're like soothing. You probably bring a soothing energy. You're probably calm, and it's probably peaceful. More peaceful when you're there than when you're not there, unless you have a bunch of other stuff like Uranus or Pluto or Mars or Saturn, changing that dynamic. So sometimes people with Neptune in the 11th kind of have to figure out how much to give and when to say no, and like when enough is enough. And it's possible they could have experiences with people in their community who will just kind of like, keep coming back for help and keep coming back for help. And it's like that dynamic can accidentally get going there. Another thing for Neptune in the 11th is you could do artistic or spiritual things in groups. You can do poetry, you can do art, you can do music, you can go out in your community and like do, like drumming circles, all kinds of different spiritual or religious things. That could just be what you do when you're in the group, or you could be the spiritual person in the group, especially if Neptune's your only planet in the 11th. You may not feel happy or fulfilled if you don't feel like you're contributing to society, something bigger than you, and making people's lives better. So that's a thing about Neptune in the 11th. So now we're going to go on to Neptune in the 12th house. For Neptune in the 12th, you could keep certain things to yourself. There is a certain privacy here with Neptune in the 12th where it's like, your dreams and your inspiration are very private. Sometimes it might be hidden from you. So that's the first signification I always go to with the 12th house is things you don't see. And with Neptune here, you may not realize how spiritual you are, how connected to God you are, how healing you are. And that's what I feel. Many people with Neptune in the 12th may not realize the healing influence they have on other people. And to work with that, you just look for it, right? You look for that thing, and you may have to keep looking for it and peel back some layers of your own psychological makeup to really see it deeper and deeper. People with Neptune in the 12th sometimes will be very, very compassionate toward other people who have silent suffering, like addictions or mental illness or other things like that, or like people on a spiritual path who are hitting that dark night of the soul, and where they really, really have a heart for those people. This is not always going to show up in their everyday life. It's not always going to be the work that they do. It can be, but sometimes it will just be something that matters to them. Now, sometimes there can be with it a feeling of powerlessness, of not knowing what to do about this, not knowing what to do about these feelings, being connected to the problems, but not having a way to fix them. And if that's true, this is that Neptune tendency to tune that frequency to suffering. And so you can consciously choose to tune that frequency to healing. Okay. So it's flipped. It's the same side. It's the different side of the same coin, where what frequency we tune to with Neptune, the suffering in that area or the healing in that area. Now, sometimes you will not have that desire to go fix the world's problems. You'll just kind of have usually a healing effect or a dispersing effect on people with those problems. Now, you can also do, sometimes Neptune in the 12th will do social work. Sometimes they will be able to handle those kind of situations that social work requires with a certain amount of delicacy. there's a soft touch that Neptune brings, right? So you can have a soft touch in other people's psychology or your own psychology. You can also spend a lot of time alone. Now, some people with Neptune here are going to be artists, or they're going to do other types of creative or spiritual work, and they'll find they work better in silence or on their own behind the scenes. Depends on other placements, but sometimes they will do that. You know, they'll write or they'll paint or they'll do some other creative thing that is, you know, on their own behind the scenes. That is how the 12th house relates to work oftentimes, is work that's behind the scenes, or work with usually psychology, archetypes, dreams, dream analysis, things like that. So there is a downside to Neptune in the 12th, and that is the tendency. Now, okay, Neptune always has a tendency for deception. We always have that potential to be deceived wherever we have Neptune. But when it's in the 12th house, that gets expanded a bit, because the 12th house rules self-undoing, self-sabotage, things we don't see about ourselves. So the potential to not see certain things about yourself is much, much higher with Neptune in the 12th. So that does have a little bit of a challenge here. And this is going to be the most true, I think, for how you might be self-sabotaging or, you know, your own bad habits, since Neptune rules like drugs and alcohol. Having Neptune in the 12th house of like addictions, it doesn't mean everyone with Neptune here has an addiction, but it is possible. It is possible that there would be addictive tendencies or tendencies to overdo certain habits or tendencies to escape that would be more profound or stronger. Now, there are other placements in the chart that can mitigate this, make it better. There are other placements that can encourage it. I never diagnose things because I don't diagnose anything, but I would not say if Neptune's here, you have to have an addiction or you have to. But that area of life usually does get some kind of emphasis, whether it is your own, somebody else's that you knew. You know, you could have lost a family member from an addiction at some point, or had to deal with a family member who had an addiction for a long time. And oftentimes this is how we develop compassion, is through suffering. And, that's not really the popular definition of Neptune, but it really is so true that with Neptune in the 12th, usually you know what it's like to suffer from the consequences of things like addiction or mental illness or other things like that. And so that's sometimes what gives you that ability. Now, it is really, really important, and I'm going to say this again. I already said it once, kind of. Maybe I didn't say this actually. Okay. If you have Neptune in the 12th, you've got to learn to see the value of what you're bringing to the table, because it's invisible to you. Now, Neptune itself doesn't rule our value, so this can be harder or easier depending on other stuff. But Neptune is our spirituality, our ability to, have compassion for all people, our ability to have that influence on people, our ability to connect to like that crown chakra energy of like, we are all one, so let's love each other. And that part of your personality is in that house where you can't see it. So it means you don't probably realize how compassionate you are usually when you have Neptune in the 12th. This can go other ways, because it can go the opposite way, where some people, when you have stories you're telling yourself, we all tell ourselves stories, that aren't always true. So with Neptune here, when you're telling yourself stories, sometimes it's a little bit harder for you to cut through that BS and see where you're telling yourself stories, if that makes sense. So that is what I have on Neptune in the 12th. This is a very mysterious placement. It does bring a focus usually on spirituality. Spirituality or service are essential for 12th housers. That is that. Okay. So I'm going to go through the comments now. And before I go through the comments, I will say just a couple announcements. Number one, the Saturn course starts tomorrow at 6:30. You can still join. If you want to get in on the first class, you need to join by tomorrow at 2 p.m. And we are doing like this tonight. We did on Neptune. We'll be doing this on Saturn through the signs, through the houses, aspects, and more. I'm going to teach you not just signs, houses, and aspects, but also the Saturn cycle and how you can use Saturn to your benefit and how you can use Saturn for long-term goals and what to expect at different points in that Saturn cycle. So that being said, one more announcement and then we'll get to the comments. So the second announcement is I have a reading sale right now, and there's a link in the description if you would like to get in on that. So I'm just going to check in on some of these. A lot of you are saying like where your Neptune is. Yeah, okay, so Arwa was saying Neptune in the third house conjunct with Mars in the same degree. I'm not going to go through every Neptune. That you would need to do a private reading for that. But I will say when Neptune is conjunct a planet, Neptune tends to dissolve that thing. So it's like sometimes it's harder to access the energy of that planet. So that's for all the planets that Neptune might be by. It'll kind of dissolve it, spiritualize it, make it less mundane and more higher level, but harder to access like the everyday aspect of the planet. And let's see. You're welcome, Nikki. Okay, so Lee Spice asked a great question here. If Neptune is shared with other planets in the same house, would it cause conflicts? It depends on the planet that it's with. So it kind of depends on, do these planets agree or disagree? And I'll just quickly go through them really quick, but this is not like a full description. So like if Neptune's with like the sun, say the sun or Mars, or Saturn, it's going to dissolve more of like the masculine side of your personality. Actually, forget Saturn. Sun or Mars, it'll dissolve some of your masculine energy. If it's this in the same sun as the sun, it has a subtle influence on sort of like toning down the ego, but it can also tone down your ability to make decisions, have a clear idea who you are, and a clear idea where you're heading in life. With Mars, same thing. Neptune in that same sign can dissolve that, can make it harder to be clear. Now, if you're Mars, now this is going to get all complicated because, like, if you have a really really strong Mars, Neptune might help make it less bad, because it'll just dissolve some of that. And then like Mercury, Neptune, this is not going to dissolve your thoughts. It's going to make you more like speak in metaphor. Neptune, Venus is beautiful. Beauty, allure, really, really, really nice combo, Neptune and Venus. So, it's like they help each other with sometimes like artistic things, beautiful things, healing things, things that feel good. And then what other planet? Saturn, Neptune and Saturn, that's going to be weird. We have that in Pisces right now. It's kind of weird because Neptune dissolves, but Saturn stabilizes, and one of them might win out on the other. So that one's a little too complicated. Moon, let's do moon, and those will be the ones we do. Neptune, moon. This might be, this will make your moon less stable, a little more fluid, a little more flowing. It'll make the emotions more flowing than it naturally would be for that moon sign. And that's really all I'm going to do on that. But overall, what does Neptune do in a house? It's going to slowly dissolve or erode or soften the other planets. Leah says, thanks. You're welcome, Leah. Tiana is saying, is your Neptune in the 5th house? If that was a question for me, yes. And I totally misspoke earlier. So, and I said this on an earlier part, but I'll say it again. My natal Neptune is in the 4th house in Placidus and the 5th house in whole sign. I am that, says glad to catch you. Glad you're here. Oh, Kim Postable says, you were just talking about this earlier. I love it when that happens. Oh, okay, Rana, thanks for sharing this. I have Neptune in the 5th house. Actually, I like romance, but only in art, painting, novels, poetry, and movies. In reality, it sucks. Yes, that's a very, very Neptune 5th house kind of thing where it's like the idea of love, the image on a screen. Neptune rules movies, it rules images on screens. Anything you see on a screen, Neptune rules that because it's a projection of reality, it's not actual reality. So you like the projection of love on TV, but not the actual love. That is so classic Neptune. Kim's asking, does it matter if it's almost in the 7th? Yeah, that's not in the 7th. So that's how that goes. Some people read differently, but that's how I read. Unless it's on the line, right? If it's on the line, then okay, you can read both 6th and 7th. Okay. Okay, thanks, Rana, for sharing that other comment. Tiana says, yes, me. I'm not sure when that was a while ago. That's awesome. And then let's see. And then more of you are sharing your placements, which is great. Oh, Sarah. Okay, Sarah, this is a good one. Sarah has a 9th house Neptune. She says, I love to take photos when I travel. So that's a perfect example of, again, photos, the projection. Neptune rules photography as well. Okay, let's see. I'm just reading a few more of these here. Okay, so Neptune's saying, let's say Pisces in the 9th. Would it be the same as Neptune being in the 9th? Where do they differentiate? Well, the quick answer, the planet takes over. The planet takes over. And if you're just learning astrology, it would be okay to just see them as equal. There's some nuances because planets aren't exactly signs. I know that sounds crazy, but they're not exactly signs. But for the most part, yeah. And that was a good question. The luck show has Neptune in the 10th. Kim Possible, thank you. Savior Complex. Okay, so the luck show says, oh my gosh, because my Neptune is in Sagittarius, so that makes sense. Yeah, stop sacrificing for others when I need to stay focused on what's important. Yeah, it's really, this is actually hard when you have Neptune like strong because you'll just do something for someone else and it's like sometimes they don't even want you to do it. Right? It's just like you just feel like you got to like give something up for someone. And this, some of these tendencies too, we just kind of come to and learn and work with. Um let's see. Um, Rana, I'm not going to answer this specific of a question here. Um, Usually, no, I'm looking at Saturn more for fear. Pisces Neptune is avoiding. Tiana, I do not. I do not read both houses if it's on 29 degrees. Okay, Barbara, we'll take this one. What if you have Neptune at the top of the yod? Watch my yod video. And your Neptune is really important. I mean, that's the quick answer is like Neptune, integrating Neptune is going to be really important because Neptune at the point of that yod means that's called the apex, means that you have two quincunxes to that planet, and quincunxes are two energies that don't really work together. And so figuring out how to work with them or just let it be okay that they don't work together all the time is a life lesson. And that when you have a yod, that means there's a built-in solution. There's more on that. Watch my yod video, but it just means it's a really, really important planet for you. Okay. So, last minute announcements, join my Saturn course and book a reading. I really enjoyed this. I've been enjoying these lives, you guys. I'm going to do more lives like this. They're going to be usually around 6 or 7 Pacific time. maybe some days that might be a different time. They will not be on Wednesdays because Wednesdays is when the Saturn course is running. So it'll be other days. And if you haven't seen the polls on the channel, that is how I'm choosing which videos to do first, is the stuff you guys vote for. So if you've not been voting in those polls, you totally can. And if you're like a lot of people who I hear from who they're like they want to get on the lives and they don't get notified, there's a Telegram group where I'll chat you every time I go live. I'll just chat you a link and a reminder. That's the only thing we do in that group is I just tell you I'm going live. So if you would like that extra reminder for any reason, you're more than welcome to join that Telegram group. And thank you guys so much for everything you do, all your comments and all your shares and, just everything you guys do to help this channel grow. I so appreciate it. And the emails you guys send me and the comments you give me, I appreciate it all. So thank you guys so much for being a part of this community, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.